When you get punched in the mouth, the fist pushes your tooth against your jawbone and gums. This can make the tiny fibers that hold your tooth in place start to stretch. If they're stretched too far, these fibers can snap, which makes the tooth loose. At the same time, the force also pulls the entire root from the jawbone, and the tooth can be completely knocked out of your gums. A dentist. Have you ever wondered why brushing your teeth makes everything taste like shit? Well, there's actually a pretty solid explanation for this. You see, your tongue is covered in proteins that act as receptors for taste. But there's one sneaky ingredient in toothpaste called SLS. SLS interferes with the proteins on your tongue. This impairs your ability to taste sweet flavors, replacing them with an unpleasant bitter sensation. Have you ever wondered why? When a tooth's nerve becomes infected, a dentist will drill into the top. When a tooth's nerve becomes infected, a dentist will drill into the top of it to get inside. Then they will remove the pulp of the tooth, which includes the damaged nerve along with blood vessels. This clears out the canals of the tooth, making them hollow. And once they're thoroughly cleaned and prepped, the dentist packs them with a permanent filling. This completely seals them off, which prevents further infection. If you lose an adult tooth, a dentist will insert a titanium screw deep inside your jawbone. Over time, this anchor heals and actually fuses with the bone, which acts as the new root for your tooth. Once it's securely implanted, a smaller piece of metal screws into the anchor. This becomes the base for the new tooth, and a custom-made artificial tooth is attached to the top. If you lose one of your adult teeth, the bone where the tooth once was can start to deteriorate. To prevent further damage, a dentist will fill the cavity with a synthetic material that mimics real bone. Once filled, a metal bracket is secured on top and the incision is closed. After the graft has healed, a large implant post is inserted into the new bone. Then, a small metal piece is screwed in and a porcelain tooth is secured on top. If you stopped brushing your teeth, it could lead to gum disease and eventually cause your teeth to fall out. But what about our ancestors? They didn't brush or floss for thousands of years, and studies indicate that they had very little tooth decay. So why could they get away with not brushing their teeth, but we can't? Well, our ancestors ate stuff like this, and it mostly supported oral health. We eat stuff like this, and it's why you can't go one day without brushing. This tooth has a worm crawling around inside of it. Now, it's obviously not real, but this is actually what people thought caused toothaches back in ancient times. Gargling with donkey's milk was a weird remedy for this fake tooth worm. They'd also try to cast it out with magic spells. Sometimes they'd cover the affected tooth in honey, and if that didn't work, they would try spitting into a frog's mouth to make it go away. When you lose a tooth, tiny buds grow into your permanent adult teeth. And if you lose the adult tooth, you'll be toothless for the rest of your life. But alligators have special layers with extra tooth buds waiting to grow. When they lose a tooth, one of the tooth buds develops into a new tooth. But they can replace their teeth up to 50 times throughout their lives. This constant tooth replacement keeps their teeth sharp. When you lose a tooth, if you lose one of your adult teeth, when you lose a tooth, tiny buds grow into your permanent adult teeth. And if you lose the adult tooth, you'll be toothless for the rest of your life. But alligators have special layers with extra tooth buds waiting to grow. When they lose a tooth, one of the tooth buds develops into a new tooth. But they can replace their teeth up to 50 times throughout their lives. This constant tooth replacement keeps their teeth sharp. If you lose If you lose one of your adult teeth, a dentist can actually replace it with a gold one. And while this might seem like an expensive fashion statement, gold is actually incredibly durable. It's capable of withstanding the daily grind of biting and chewing without wearing down. And gold also doesn't corrode or rust over time, ensuring that it lasts longer than other tooth replacements. If you removed your eyeballs and then your skin, you would definitely still be the same person, just without eyeballs and skin. And if you continued removing parts of your body, like your muscles, nerves, and blood vessels, you'd still technically be you, just as a skeleton. But what if you took all of these parts and assembled them onto a new skeleton? Would you still be you? Or would the new skeleton with all of your parts be the new you? Who is who? When kids eat sugar, they become hyperactive and crazy. And most parents blame the sugar for this. But is this actually the sugar's fault? Well, despite popular belief, studies have shown no link between sugar consumption and hyperactivity. So what is going on here? Well, there's a few things at play. First, because parents believe that sugar makes their kids hyper, they're already expecting it, which makes them examine their kids' behavior more closely, entering into a tendency known as confirmation bias. Also, sugar is often consumed in exciting environments like birthday parties, so kids are already hyper, which makes sugar consumption a correlation.
If you took out all of the gold in A$AP Rocky's grills and melted it down, how much money would you get? Well, his grills only weigh about half an ounce, and most are made of 18-karat gold, which is only 75% real gold. This means there's around 0.38 ounces of pure gold in his mouth. And since gold is worth about $3,400 per ounce, his grills would only be worth about $1,200. To get $1 million, you would need over 20 pounds of gold in your mouth, and no one's jaw could ever hold that much. The metal file could snap off inside your tooth during a root canal. And this usually happens because your roots are curved and narrow, meaning the file can get stuck. If it's in too deep, the dentist could actually break through your tooth while trying to remove it. Instead, they'll leave the broken piece inside, sealing it off with the filling. And since it's made from medical-grade steel, it won't cause you any harm. They would crush the dead mouse until it was a fine paste. Then they added oils and herbs and applied this paste directly onto the aching tooth. The mouse paste was believed to have healing properties that would help reduce the pain and even cure the tooth. But in reality, the bacteria from the dead mouse would often cause infections, leaving the patient worse than before. Your gums will bleed if you flossed. Your gums will bleed if you flossed for the first time in a while. That's because your gums are packed with tiny blood vessels sitting just under the surface. When you don't floss, bacteria builds up, making your gums.
I regret downloading.
Your gums will bleed if you flossed for the first. Your gums will bleed if you flossed for the first time in a while. That's because your gums are packed with tiny blood vessels sitting just under the surface. When you don't floss, bacteria builds up, making your gums swollen, and the blood vessels inside weaken. And when you finally floss, the string easily tears into them, causing the blood vessels to burst. Since they are so close to the surface, even a small cut can cause a lot of bleeding. Your gums will bleed if you flossed for the first time in a while. Have you ever wondered why brushing your teeth? Its fangs go right through your toenail as it bites. Its fangs go right through your toenail as it bites. This is possible because they're as sharp as needles and grow. Its fangs go right through your toenail as it bites. This is possible because they're as sharp as needles and grow up to 1/4 of an inch long. The venom they inject is considered the deadliest in the world. One bite can cause intense pain, muscle spasms, and difficulty breathing within minutes. And you'd need up to 12 shots of antivenom just to survive. Now, these aggressive spiders can hide under logs, in your shoes, and they can even swim, meaning in Australia, nowhere is safe. Its fangs go right through your The man fell onto an air hose, and the nozzle pierced his butt. Now, this was actually a high-pressure air hose, and it pumped air into his body at 100 psi. In minutes, the man swelled to twice his normal size. His coworkers rushed to stop the air supply, but he had already inflated like a balloon. The air had filled his abdomen, chest, and even his face. Paramedics tried to treat him, but the pressure pushed the IV out of his skin. The man deflated back to normal after 3 days and ended up living. Some people cut the sides of their toenails to avoid them becoming ingrown, but this can actually make them worse. You see, if you cut them with a rounded edge, the nail will follow this curved path as it grows. This can make the nail dig into the sides of your toe, causing it to pierce the skin and grow inward. Instead, you should just cut them straight across. If you cut your toenail too short, sometimes the nail will push into the skin as it grows, eventually curving down into your toe. And over time, the surrounding skin can become swollen and infected, making it painful to walk. A doctor will often cut off the curved part of the nail so it can grow back correctly. But if it's severe enough, sometimes the whole nail will have to be removed. The sudden impact in a severe car crash can cause your head to snap backwards violently. This violent motion stretches and tears the ligament. The sudden impact in a severe car crash can cause your head to snap backwards violently. This violent motion stretches and tears the ligaments and muscles that connect the skull to the neck. And this separation can damage the spinal cord, resulting in an internal decapitation, when the skull can sometimes separate from the spine without breaking the skin. If treated immediately, survival is sometimes possible with surgical intervention. She jumped, but her main parachute didn't open, and when she pulled the emergency, it sent her spinning out of control. She hit the ground at 80 miles an hour, shattering her bones, and the force was so hard the fillings flew out of her teeth. Now, she should have died, but she landed on a mound of fire ants, and they stung her over 200 times. The venom shocked her heart into beating and released a massive surge of adrenaline. And when paramedics finally found her, she was covered in ants, but alive. She jumped. If you got bit by a flea, a bacterium would enter your body and begin to multiply quickly. They would head to your lymph nodes, causing them to swell up and forming painful bumps in your armpits. The bacteria can also get into your bloodstream, causing bleeding under your skin. This bleeding makes your skin turn dark and black in certain spots, which is why it was called the Black Death. Without medicine to stop it, the infection would spread fast, killing millions.
If you die in a lake, your body will initially sink because it's denser than water. But as bacteria begins to decompose your tissues, they produce gases, and these gases accumulate and cause the body to bloat, making it buoyant. Eventually, the body will float to the surface due to this gas buildup. And if left undisturbed, the body will stay afloat until the gases escape, which may cause it to sink again. The warrior chopped off his enemy's head as a trophy after winning the battle. He tied it to his horse and started to ride home. But as the horse galloped, one of the dead man's teeth scraped the warrior's leg. Now, it was just a small scratch, but it soon became infected. Bacteria from the wound spread through his blood, shutting down his organs within days. And while the warrior had killed his enemy, in the end, the dead man claimed the final victory. The warrior. If you got bit by a when you pick your nose, your fingernail scratches the delicate skin inside. Now this lining When you pick your nose, your fingernail scratches the delicate skin inside. Now this lining is full of tiny blood vessels, which can easily get damaged. If you keep picking, you can make small cuts that don't heal properly. And over time, these cuts can weaken the wall between your nostrils. If the damage gets bad enough, it can create a hole. And this hole can make it hard to breathe and can cause nosebleeds, sometimes requiring a surgery. When you pick your nose, if your tongue was cut out of your mouth, you would immediately lose the ability to speak. And this is because your tongue helps to shape sounds by pressing against the roof of your mouth and teeth. If it were gone, swallowing would also be near impossible because the tongue moves food around the mouth and pushes it to the back of the throat, allowing you to swallow. Some people compulsively eat their own hair until it becomes trapped in their stomach. This happens because our digestive system can't break it down, and as more hair is swallowed, it turns into a dense, matted ball. This can grow so large that it causes a blockage in the stomach, and a doctor can try to break it apart with a tube inserted through the mouth. But if the hairball is big enough and unreachable, a surgery is required to remove it. They pulled pieces of the tumor through her skull and straight out of her eye socket. You see, she had a tumor wrapped around the top of her spine, but it was too risky to operate in that area. So instead, surgeons cut her lower eyelid and removed part of the bone. Then they took out a section of cheekbone, making a tunnel to the upper spine. Surgical tools and a camera were inserted. Then, piece by piece, they carefully cut away the tumor and pulled it out of her eye. If you collected all the grease from your hair, you'd have around 1 gram of oil per day. And after about 2 years, you'd have enough to fry a single corn dog. Now, deep frying a whole turkey would take about 27 years of collected hair grease. And if you kept gathering it for over 500 years, you'd have about 60 gallons, which is enough oil to deep fry an entire pig. If you collected all the grease from your When you bite your tongue, your jaw muscles are incredibly powerful, capable of exerting hundreds of pounds of force. But your brain will stop you once it senses the pain. However, during a seizure, this protective mechanism can fail. A seizure can cause intense involuntary muscle contractions, including in the jaw, leading to a powerful bite down on the tongue. In severe cases, the wound can be so bad that it has to be stitched back together. She spilled her husband's ashes on her hand and decided to lick them off. And even though they tasted like rotten eggs, she felt closer to her husband while eating them. Soon, she was carrying the ashes everywhere and snacking on them several times a day. And she ended up eating a pound of the remains. But corpses are treated with 8 different chemicals before they're cremated. And if eaten, they can cause hallucinations and even death. Your suitcase is tagged with a barcode and sent onto a conveyor belt system. And during this journey, sudden stops and sharp turns can jostle it around. The barcode is scanned, which directs it to the correct area, where rough handling and stacking can cause damage. And by the time you retrieve it, your luggage might not look too great. But if you get a Ridge suitcase, it's built with a polycarbonate weatherproof shell and sturdy corner protectors. This allows it to withstand the sudden stops, sharp turns, and rough handling, ensuring your property stays protected. Get yours today by clicking below. He grabbed at the mouse, but it ran up his sleeve and out through the neck of his shirt. As he yelled and tried to catch it, it darted into his mouth. And in shock, he swallowed it. The mouse panicked and began tearing and biting the inside of his throat, causing him extreme pain. And the man died, his throat and chest torn up by the mouse's movements. If you grew to over 1,000 pounds, the pressure from your own body would start to crush on your internal organs, making it hard to eat. But if you did manage to keep gaining weight, lying down would flatten your lungs, making it almost impossible to breathe. Now, pound for pound, your bones are actually stronger than concrete, meaning you'd have to weigh a massive 1,800 pounds before your skeleton would just collapse. He grabbed at the mouse, but the warrior chopped. If a beetle somehow got underneath your skin and started crawling around, there's a good chance that you have a condition called formication. This unsettling sensation feels as if insects are scuttling just beneath your skin, but in reality, there's nothing there. The feeling is caused by nerves sending false signals to the brain, creating the disturbing illusion. This can cause the victim to scratch their own skin until it becomes damaged. If a bee This frog swallows its own fertilized eggs, sending them straight into its stomach. But instead of digesting them, its body shuts off stomach acid, turning the belly into a protective nursery. Inside, the embryos develop safely, feeding off their yolk sacs as they grow into tiny frogs. After several weeks, the mother begins to vomit, and one by one, the fully formed froglets crawl out of her mouth. As she yawned, the round end of her jawbone slid out of its socket, and the muscles around it pulled tight, but couldn't push the bone back in place, leaving her jaw stuck wide open. At the hospital, doctors took x-rays and saw the joint was dislocated. She waited for hours, jaw still hanging open, until they finally sedated her. Then 4 doctors pushed and pulled until the bone finally popped back into its socket. If you took out all grill, if everyone on Earth clipped their toenails and threw them into the ocean, you might think they'd float and blanket a huge area. But toenails don't actually float, so they would pile up at the bottom of the ocean. As over 82 billion clippings rain down, it would choke fish and smother the seafloor until a massive pile broke through the surface. And after this global clipping, you would have a walkable toenail island 10 times bigger than Central Park. Would you rather stand still
Would you rather stand still for 15 minutes or go for a casual 15-minute walk? Well, even though standing sounds easier, most people would choose the walk. And this is because when you walk, your muscles take turns, contracting, then relaxing. So blood keeps flowing and pain stays low. But when you stand still, your thighs and lower back stay switched on, and tight muscles block blood flow, causing them to ache. When you walk, your calves push blood back upward with each step, but standing slows that pump down, causing it to pool and building discomfort. Most of us would choose the walk because our bodies were built to move. When an ant bites you, it grabs your skin with its pinchers, but it's not actually the pinchers that hurt you. You see, the ant uses them to hold on to your skin, but then they bend their bodies upwards and stab you with their stinger. Now, because they're holding on to you with such a good grip, it allows the ant to sting you multiple times in the same area. This injects you with their venom, which causes that sharp stinging pain. They put a tack on her chair as a joke, and when she sat down, it pierced her skin. She let out a yell before laughing at the prank. But a few days later, she began to feel sick. You see, the tack actually had bacteria on it, which entered her bloodstream through the wound. The infection quickly spread, causing severe blood poisoning. Doctors did everything they could, but unfortunately, she didn't make it. Have you ever wondered how a zipper works? Well, believe it or not, they're surprisingly simple. You see, there are two main parts, the slider and the teeth. Each row of teeth fits perfectly into the other row, but they're staggered, so they need the slider to join them. The slider has a slight incline on both sides, which pushes the teeth to lock into each other at just the right angles. Have you ever wondered if your tooth falls out, pick it up by the If your gums pull back and show too much of your teeth, a dentist will meticulously cut around the damaged area. This creates a precise flap to prepare the area for the following step. Next, the dentist will take a new piece of healthy gum tissue and fit it seamlessly into place. Over time, this newly grafted tissue merges with the surrounding area, which heals the gum. If you accidentally swallow a tooth, if you stopped brushing, If you could bite through a carrot, some people think this means you could bite through your own finger. But biting through a carrot only takes about 45 pounds of force. And just fracturing a human finger requires around 335 pounds of force. The average human only has a bite force of around 160 pounds, which isn't enough to break through bone. And even if you somehow did have enough force to bite off your own finger, your brain's pain response would stop you before you could finish the act. If you get rabies, the virus travels from the wound to your brain. As it reaches your brain, you'll start to experience flu-like symptoms. Over time, it can cause confusion, agitation, and even a fear of water. And this fear of water makes swallowing almost impossible, leading to excessive saliva that foams out of the mouth. After a while, you'll go into a coma, and with no cure, you'll eventually die.
If you get bit by an animal with rabies, the virus will spread to you through their saliva. When the symptoms start, it will sort of feel like you're sick with the flu. This is often followed by intense anxiety, aggression, and paranoia. Now, one of the weirdest symptoms of rabies is the fear of water. This happens because the virus triggers painful throat spasms, which make even the thought of water agonizing. And this can sometimes lead to a buildup of saliva, causing patients to foam at the mouth. When some animals blink, their eyelids can actually close horizontally. Now, some animals still have normal vertical eyelids. They just also have this second set that is horizontal. It's made from a membrane that sweeps across the eye to clear away debris. But this eyelid is actually completely translucent, which allows the animal to see through it. This gives them a competitive edge in the wild while still being able to blink. When some animals blink, the snake fell, landing on her arm and wrapping around it tight. You see, a hawk flying by had accidentally dropped it, and the bird suddenly swooped down and tried to take back its lunch. The snake squeezed tighter as the hawk scratched and pecked at her arm, but finally it pulled the snake off and flew away, leaving the woman injured but happy to be alive. The boy fired a shot at the black bear, wounding it. But when they tracked it down, it charged at them out of nowhere. The father fired 8 shots at it, but he missed every single one, and the bear pinned him to the ground, mauling his face and arms. He tried to defend himself, but it was too strong. Then the boy pulled the trigger, killing it with a single shot. The father was rushed to the hospital, but he survived thanks to his son. The bear charged at the woman in her backyard, ready to attack. But right before it struck, her wiener dog barked and lunged at the bear, forcing it to stop. The bear swiped at the dog, slicing into its skin, but it didn't back down, and the distraction gave the woman enough time to defend herself. The dog chased the bear off, barking until it disappeared into the woods. When a sperm whale eats a squid, the sharp beak irritates the whale's intestines. To protect itself, the whale coats the beak in a fatty substance. Eventually, it gets pooped out into the ocean, where it floats for years. And over time, it hardens, developing a sweet, earthy smell. If you find it washed up on the beach, don't be grossed out. This fatty substance is used to make luxury perfumes and sells for thousands. Have you ever wondered why dog noses have these slits on the After being cut off, its blood vessels and nerves were attached to the neck of a larger dog. And once everything was connected, the small dog's head and front legs were sewn onto the larger dog's back. This disturbing setup forced them to share the same blood supply, keeping them both alive. And for 3 weeks, the small dog's head could move and bark. Now, sadly, the strain was too much on their bodies, and both dogs eventually died. If a radioactive spider bit you, you might think you'd get superpowers, but instead you'd start to feel nauseous and dizzy, and then you'd vomit as the radiation damaged your cells. Next, you'd feel extremely tired, and your hair would fall out. Soon, your immune system would weaken, leaving you open to infections. And if a spider bit you more than once, the extreme exposure to radiation would cause organ failure and internal bleeding. So instead of fighting crime, you'd actually just be fighting for your life. If a radioactive spider bit
Subclub members can...
If you're about to hit a deer, most people will swerve to avoid the impact, but this can result in a crash far more deadly. Instead, brake as smoothly as you can. Keep the car straight and brace for impact. Now, right as you hit the deer, take your foot off the brake so that your car pushes the deer along the road. If you don't, the deer could roll over your car and smash through the windscreen, killing you both. If you encounter a grizzly bear and try to run, they'll easily catch you. Instead, stay calm and avoid eye contact while slowly backing away. If the bear charges, stand your ground, because most charges are actually bluffs. If it does attack, lie flat on your stomach, covering your neck with your hands. Stay still and play dead, as grizzlies often lose interest if they perceive no threat. If you're in striking range of a venomous snake, your first instinct might be to run, but sudden movements can provoke the snake even more. Instead, stay calm and back away slowly without making any sudden gestures. If the snake strikes, try to put a barrier between you like a jacket. And if you are bitten, try not to panic, because it will increase your heart rate, which will spread the venom more quickly. If you're in striking range of a venomous snake, if you're bitten by a black widow, glands near the mouth force venom through the fangs and into the wound. Then it quickly spreads to tissues surrounding the bite. This venom binds to nerve endings, causing them to fire rapidly. And this makes your muscles contract, leading to severe cramps and pain. But unless you're a small child, the bite is actually rarely fatal, just extremely painful. If you're bitten by a black widow, glands near the mouth force venom through the fangs and into the wound. Then it quickly spreads to tissues surrounding the bite. This venom binds to nerve endings, causing them to fire rapidly. And this makes your muscles contract, leading to severe cramps and pain. But unless you're a small child, the bite is actually rarely fatal, just extremely. If you swallow, a hole in a rock is filled. A dog licked a small scrape on a woman in 2018, and after several hours, she was rushed to the hospital with severe symptoms. Doctors discovered she had contracted a rare bacterial infection from the dog's saliva through the small wound on her skin. This infection quickly spread, causing her limbs to turn black and slowly die. Doctors had no choice but to amputate her hands and legs to stop the infection and save her life. A dog licked a small scrape on a woman in 2018. When a tiny frog hops into a giant tarantula's burrow, it seems like it's walking right into a trap. But the spider checks the frog with its legs, and if the frog has the right chemical signals, it's safe. The frog helps by munching on ants that could attack the spider's eggs. In return, the tarantula becomes the frog's bodyguard, scaring off bigger predators. It makes the frog seem like a pet, but they're really just tolerant roommates. How much blood could a tick drink before it pops? At first, it's tiny, but as it drinks, its body stretches like a balloon, and it can inflate up to 50 times its normal size. But if the tick kept drinking, the pressure would build as it swells up to the size of a grape, and then eventually bursts. Now, leeches can grow up to 11 times bigger, around 17 inches when fully engorged. But if they drink too much, their stretched out bodies split open and they die. How much blood could a tick drink before it pops?
If you kick a soccer,
There's an app called Beagle.
Its fangs go right through your toenail. If you could bite through a When a jellyfish stings you, it lodges microscopic barbs into your skin. Their tentacles are armed with thousands of them, and they're each filled with venom. Now, even if you just lightly brush against them, the stingers will immediately embed into your skin and release their painful toxins. The sting can cause an immediate sharp pain and may turn swollen and itchy as the venom spreads. With a knife, stab the cross on the lobster's head to kill it. Then poach it in salted water just enough to loosen the meat. After that, snap off the claws at the knuckles. Twist, then pull.
Have you ever wondered why dog noses
Approach it from behind, never from the side or front. If you have to wrestle an alligator, cover its eyes with a shirt or towel to blind it, making it slower to react. Leap onto the alligator's back, placing your hands on its neck to pin its head down. Once on top, press down with all your strength, covering its eyes and gripping its jaw. By keeping the mouth shut, the alligator can't fight back. To release it, throw the head forward and jump back quickly. Approach it from behind. Their sharp teeth chew through the tree, weakening it until it falls. It then drags the log to the water and arranges it with others across the stream. This slows the water down, but there are still gaps in the dam. So the beaver gathers mud, rocks, and more branches, packing them tightly around the logs. This seals everything together, stops the water, and creates a safe, stable environment for their homes. Most people think a camel's hump is full of water. This was so they could hydrate across the desert, right? Well, that's actually not true. You see, camels can drink up to 40 gallons of water, but that water is actually stored in their bloodstream. So if that's the case, then what is inside their humps? Well, it turns out it's actually a massive collection of fat. This fat serves as a powerhouse of energy, fueling camels across the harsh desert. Most people think a camel's hump is full of water. The antlers snap off as the deer shakes its head violently, and you might think they'd be lost forever, but deer lose their antlers every winter, and a chemical reaction produces the calcium needed to grow new ones. As they grow, they're covered in soft velvety skin, and this skin sends oxygen and blood to the antlers until they're fully formed. Once the bone hardens, the velvet is rubbed off, and the deer's new antlers are ready to use. The antlers snap off as the deer shakes its head violently. An elephant's trunk may only be the size of a small tree branch, but it's actually strong enough to uproot a tree. The trunk is made up of over 40,000 muscles. With this strength, it can lift objects weighing as much as a grand piano. But all of these tiny muscles can make it sensitive enough to also pick up something as small as a single blade of grass, and careful enough to crack a single nut for a snack. An elephant's trunk. If you stepped into a tank of Gara rufa fish, they'll start to bite your feet, but it actually doesn't hurt at all. You see, these fish just lightly tear off the dead skin on the surface. As they eat the skin, it gently exfoliates the area, leaving it much smoother. And as more dead skin is removed, it stimulates nerves in your feet, leading to increased blood flow and circulation. If you get stung by a jellyfish, some people think you should pee on the sting to ease the pain. But this can actually make things worse by activating more stingers. This will cause more venom to be released, making it more painful. Instead, rinse the area with seawater to remove any stingers, and then use vinegar to neutralize leftover toxins. Finally, soak the area in hot water and apply lotion to help your skin heal. If you get stung by a jellyfish, some people think you should pee on the sting to ease the pain. But this can actually make things worse by activating more stingers. This will cause more venom to be released, making it more painful. Instead, rinse the area with seawater to remove any stingers, and then use vinegar to neutralize leftover toxins. Finally, soak the area in hot water and apply lotion to help your skin heal. If a kangaroo is being chased by a dog, it might jump into a river. Now, once in the water, the kangaroo waits. The dog, following the chase, will usually swim after it. As the dog swims closer, the kangaroo grabs it with its powerful arms and sharp claws. Next, it pushes the dog's head underwater and holds it there, trying to drown it. With its strong claws, the kangaroo grips tight, using its weight to keep the dog submerged until it stops moving. If a kangaroo is being He robbed a couple at knife point, but security guards saw and immediately chased him. Panicked, he sprinted toward a nearby zoo, hoping to hide inside until it was safe. But in the darkness, he unknowingly climbed into the tiger enclosure. Inside were two fully grown tigers, startled by the man. Before he realized his mistake, they attacked, biting his neck and mauling him severely. When police arrived, the man was already dead and covered in bite marks. You'd expect a bird to get electrocuted when it lands on a power line, but if it only touches one wire, nothing happens. That's because electricity has to flow between two places, a high energy place and a low energy place. So if it touches both of these wires at the same time, the electricity will try to balance itself by flowing through the bird, which would burn it to a crisp.
If you stood next to a rooster while it was crowing, the noise is so loud it could actually damage your hearing. A rooster's crow is almost as loud as a gunshot. So if that's the case,
If you're in striking range of a It drops the large bones, breaking them into smaller pieces, which it then eats. This vulture's stomach acid is so strong it can dissolve them within 24 hours. When threatened, it pumps blood into the rings around their eyes, making them bigger and brighter. It also dyes its feathers by rubbing itself with rusty water. When fighting over food, this bold red color can signal strength and is used to intimidate other birds into giving up. It dropped. A 60-ton dead whale was loaded onto a flatbed truck in Taiwan, but as it traveled through the crowded streets, gases built up inside the decomposing carcass. Eventually, the pressure from these gases became too strong, causing it to burst out of the whale. The blast sent blood, organs, and blubber flying through the streets. It covered cars, shops, and bystanders in a gruesome, smelly mess. Place a trail of bait leading to the door, with the last piece at the far end of the trap. The animal will follow the trail inside the cage, and when it reaches for the last piece, it steps on a trigger plate. Its weight causes the latch to release, dropping the door in place, and a lock keeps it shut until you release it somewhere else. If you hold a cup of gasoline over a wasp's nest, the wasps will fall into the gas and die. This happens because when the cup is placed on a flat surface, it effectively seals in the gas vapors, forcing the wasps to inhale it. This disorients the wasps, causing them to fall into the gas and die. Now, while this strategy might be effective, there's definitely some risk involved. Everything needs to go exactly as planned, or you might end up covered in gas while being attacked by wasps. If you hold a cup of gasoline over a wasp's nest, the wasps will fall into the gas and die. This happens because when the cup is placed on a flat surface, it effectively seals in the gas vapors, forcing the wasps to inhale it. This disorients the wasps, causing them to fall into the gas and die. Now, if you step on a sea urchin, their spines can lodge deep into your skin, and if you try to just yank them out right away, they might snap off, leaving fragments stuck under the surface. Instead, you should use tweezers to pull out the bigger, visible spines. Then soak the area in warm water and vinegar for the smaller, embedded ones. While this won't completely dissolve them, it'll loosen things up a little when you dig out the remaining pieces. It drops the large bones. A 60-ton dead whale was. Place a trail of bait leading to the door, with the If you're in striking range, if a bull starts charging at you, pufferfish release a small amount of toxin when threatened, which can be dangerous in large doses. However, dolphins seem to know just the right amount to get a small hit of the toxin. They pass the pufferfish around like a toy, carefully avoiding harm but enjoying the effects. This toxin can create a trance-like, almost high sensation. These blissed-out dolphins have been seen floating near the surface and admiring their own reflection. Pufferfish. When a scorpion attacks you, it arches its tail
When a scorpion attacks you, it arches its tail all the way over its body. Then it rapidly thrusts its stinger into your skin. This stinger injects a venom that causes pain and swelling. Now, the sting from this scorpion won't cause any serious side effects. But if you happen to be stung by an Indian red scorpion, their venom can cause life-threatening symptoms or worse.
If you kept a fox and raised it like a dog, you might think it would make a pretty cool pet. But foxes mark their territory constantly, and their pee contains a chemical similar to skunk spray, which would stink up your home. If it gets bored, it would rip holes in your couch and chew up your table, or just jump your fence and escape. Now, you could try training it with food, but if you ever punish it, it could bite you, which is why they're banned as pets in over 20 states, and some people think they're better served as scarves.
Their necks extend far outside of their shells. When they chomp down, it's like an iron clamp with muscles that don't easily release. Snapping turtles have an incredibly strong bite that can even break bones. And they don't just bite, they refuse to let go. They have been known to hang on for minutes, even if you try to pull them off. Their necks extend far. If you touch an Australian stinging tree, the leaves are actually covered in tiny needle-like hairs that inject venom into your skin. This venom causes intense pain that can last for a long time. And if you try to remove them with your hands, you might break the hairs, causing more pain. So instead, you should apply sticky tape and peel it off slowly. This will pull out the hairs intact, reducing the pain and irritation. If an octopus loses some of its limbs and then somehow makes it back into the ocean, you might think it would die from the open wounds. But they have an ability that allows them to quickly seal the cut before it becomes infected. Once the wounds begin to heal, new cells can start to reconstruct the missing limbs. And after several weeks, new fully functional tentacles regrow. If an octopus, your body is placed vertically into a deep. When a sperm whale eats a squid, bats fly around, catching and eating the insects that threaten to destroy the priceless books. This old library has used these little helpers since the late 1700s to naturally keep the books in good shape. Large leather sheets were used to protect the tables from bat droppings. And today, the librarians still use the same method every night. They then clean up every morning when the bats go to sleep behind the shelves. Bats fly around, catching and eating the insects. When a female tick bites you, it cuts into your skin and anchors itself with a barbed piece of its mouth. Then it injects a numbing chemical through its saliva, allowing it to stay undetected. This saliva also prevents your blood from clotting, which keeps a steady flow into the tick's mouth. Over several days, the tick consumes so much blood that it grows to several times its original size. And once it's fully engorged, it detaches, falls off, and eventually starts laying eggs. When a female, the snake fell, landing on her arm. They pulled out the bear's teeth and ripped out its claws to make it a fair fight. And they even cut tendons in its arm to stop it from grabbing its opponents. You see, these bears were used in live wrestling matches, which were held in bars in the 90s. People would fight the trained bears, and if they won, they could claim a cash prize. Some people would even cheat by getting the animals drunk before the match. But the bears were still far stronger, easily pinning the wrestlers to the ground. If you're about to hit a deer, when some animals blink, it was longer than a school bus and could open its mouth wide enough to swallow a full-grown human. And this is how it compares to the biggest snake alive today. Its body was thicker than a barrel, and it would be as high as your waist if you stood next to it. It would wrap itself around a massive crocodile, crushing it hard enough to rupture organs before swallowing it whole in a single bite.
It was longer than the bird spits a thin strand of saliva onto the rock. Then it adds another, building it up layer by layer. As the saliva dries, it forms a hard cup-shaped nest. Harvesters remove these nests from the cave walls and clean it until it's pure white. When the nest is cooked, it melts into a thick soup that people eat, believing that it helps their skin look healthier. And because each nest takes weeks for a single bird to build, they sell for thousands of dollars per pound, making these spit nests one of the most valuable foods in the world.
If you've ever wondered why dog toys squeak, well, I have the answer, and it's kind of disturbing. You see, even though the noise is annoying to us, dogs love it because of their wolf ancestry. The squeaking activates their hunting instinct because it's the same sound a small animal makes when it's dying. If you've ever wondered why dog toys squeak, well, I have If you've ever wondered why dog toys squeak,
When a tiny frog they placed their hand into a bag full of ants, letting them sting the skin. Now, these are bullet ants, and they have the most painful sting on Earth, feeling like being shot. And this lasts for hours and even days. But the young boys must endure this without giving up. You see, they do this as a test to become tribal leaders, proving that they're strong and brave. And to officially pass, they have to repeat this agonizing ritual several times. They placed their hand into a bag full of ants, letting them sting the skin. Now, these are bullet ants, and they have the most painful sting on Earth, feeling like being shot. And this lasts for hours and even days. But the young boys must endure this without giving up. You see, they do this as a test to become tribal leaders, proving that they're strong and brave, and to officially ritual several times. If you pulled a fish out of the ocean and dropped it into a pond, it would quickly die. That's because without salt, they absorb too much water, making their organs swell. But if a bull shark is plopped into a lake, they start peeing like crazy, up to 20 times more than normal, to flush out the excess water they're absorbing. At the same time, a special gland in their butt works overtime to hold on to salt, preserving the delicate balance in their blood that most fish would lose, meaning you could find a bull shark swimming in any body of water. If a snake were swallowing you, it would pull your feet and legs into its mouth, while muscle contractions worked to slowly pull you in further. As more of you enters the snake, you start to feel a squeezing pressure as the snake's muscles constrict around you, and you would remain alive during this. But most snakes can't actually fit human shoulders into their mouths. If they could, though, the muscles in the snake would squeeze you so tight that you would suffocate. If a snake were swallowing, the massive snake crashed through the ceiling after escaping into the air vents, and it fell onto a mattress where two boys were having a sleepover. They had spent the day working with farm animals, and to the snake, they may have smelled like food. It wrapped itself around both children and squeezed them as if they were prey. Tragically, both boys died, and the python was later put down. If a snake bites itself, their fangs inject venom, just like it would with other prey. Now, this venom enters its bloodstream, delivering toxins that are usually deadly to other animals. But most snakes have built up an immunity to their own venom by being exposed to it in low doses for a long period of time. As the venom enters the bloodstream, antibodies neutralize it, which protects the snake. If a snake bites itself, their fangs inject. The cicadas spend most. If a snake bites itself, their fangs inject venom, just like it. The cicadas spend most of their lives buried underground, sucking sap from tree roots. And year after year, billions stay hidden, growing slowly in the dark. Then, after 17 years, they all begin to crawl out. Billions emerge together, covering trees and fences and streets. And each female lays hundreds of eggs in tree branches. When the eggs hatch, the tiny babies drop to the ground and dig down into the soil, starting the entire cycle again. The cicadas spend most of their lives buried. As she sat down on the outhouse toilet, something reached up and scratched her butt. She screamed, thinking it was a squirrel. But when her brother lifted the seat, he came face to face with a black bear. It had crawled in from beneath the back door and was living under the toilet. He slammed the lid shut, and they ran to safety, waiting for the bear to move out. And after that, they carried bear spray every time they went to the toilet. As she sat down on the outhouse toilet, something reached up and scratched her butt. She screamed, thinking it was a squirrel. But when her brother lifted the seat, he came face to face with a black bear. It had crawled. Biting through a bowling ball is something that a grizzly bear could easily do. And this is because their wide, thick skull provides a stable anchor for the massive jaw muscles. These highly developed muscles generate the force needed to deliver such crushing bites, over 1,200 pounds per square inch. Additionally, their sharp, robust teeth can penetrate thick hides and tough materials. This incredible strength allows them to hunt large prey and access nutrient-rich bone marrow. The massive snake crashed through the ceiling after If a snake bites itself, they tie a small rope around the baby's leg, tight enough that it can't break free. Now, the elephant pulls and tugs for days, but the rope holds tight. Eventually, the baby gives up. But once the elephant is fully grown, they still tie it up. And even though it's now strong enough to snap the rope with ease, it doesn't. It stands there bound up like it was when it was young. You see, it still believes that the rope is stronger than him, meaning what's holding it back isn't the rope, it's just the belief that breaking free is impossible. They tie a small rope. Bear spray might help if you're being attacked by a polar bear. It's made from concentrated capsaicin, the active ingredient in chili peppers. And when you spray it, the capsaicin causes intense burning in the bear's eyes, nose, and lungs, temporarily blinding and overwhelming the animal's senses. This gives you crucial time to escape, as the bear is likely to be incapacitated. Biting through a bowling ball. The massive snake crashed. The poodle fell and hit the head of a 75-year-old woman. Both died instantly, and a crowd gathered around them, spilling out into the street. A passing bus hit a different woman, who died from the injuries, and a nearby man suffered a heart attack from the shock of seeing all three deaths. He died on the way to the hospital, making him the fourth victim of the dog's fall. He had a seizure in front of his dog, who grabbed the man's phone from his pocket because it sensed something was wrong. It pawed at the emergency call button, and dispatchers heard the man seizing, sending police and medics to his house. And when they arrived, the dog led them to where the man was lying. They took him to the hospital, and the doctors were able to save his life thanks to the dog's quick thinking. You could slip a noose over the head of a Komodo dragon, but with a violent thrash, the stick could be ripped away, and its powerful jaws might snap shut on your arm. This is why you should create a small loop from the wire, then attach it to a stick. The noose is carefully positioned over the lizard's head and gently tightened with a quick tug to secure it. When used on smaller reptiles, this technique is effective and relatively safe, but attempting it on a large, aggressive species can have catastrophic consequences. You could slip a noose over the head of a Komodo dragon, but with a violent thrash, the stick could be ripped away, and its powerful jaws might snap shut on your arm. The vet will insert metal instruments through the mouth and into your dog's throat. Once accessed, the vocal cords are cut and partially removed. After they healed, the dog's bark becomes much quieter and softer. But over long periods of time, scar tissue can form, causing breathing difficulty. And it can get so bad that your dog might completely lose their bark. So you probably shouldn't do this to your dog.
Have you ever wondered why dog noses?
If a radio It bites you and makes small incisions in your skin. Then it begins to lap up the blood with its grooved tongue. As it drinks, a special saliva enters the wound and stops the blood from clotting, allowing them to drink. The bat consumes just a small amount, usually about 2 tablespoons, before flying away. And while they mostly target livestock, vampire bats do sometimes feed on human blood too. It bites you and makes small incisions. He pulled the trigger, aiming right for the tiger, and it roared as it ran into the forest. Now, he thought the tiger was gone, but it was actually following his scent, tracking the man through the forest to his cabin. There, the tiger destroyed his pans, his tools, and even his outhouse, all while he was gone. Then it waited. For nearly 2 days, it stayed near his door, silent and still. And when he finally returned, the tiger attacked before he could reach his gun. It wasn't hunting for food, it was waiting just for him. He pulled the trigger. The robot bunnies were placed deep into the swamp. They were covered in fur, heated from the inside, and programmed to twitch like prey. You see, giant pythons were eating too many animals. Rabbits, raccoons, and even bobcats were disappearing. But the snakes were nearly impossible to find. So they placed the robot bunnies in the swamp to lure the snakes out of hiding. Cameras caught the moment they slithered close, alerting the hunters so they could trap the snakes and remove them. The robot bunnies were placed to twitch like prey. You see, giant pythons were eating too many animals. Rabbits, raccoons, and even bobcats were disappearing. But when a military dog breaks a tooth, the damaged parts are removed before the tooth is carefully cleaned and filed down into a stump. Next, an impression of the tooth is taken with a special material and sent to a lab, where a block of titanium is shaped into a cap that perfectly fits the tooth. Then, the cap is glued onto the stump with special dental cement to hold it in place. Once it dries, the dog gets a brand new tooth, letting it bite normally again. When a military dog breaks a tooth, he dropped his wallet, and his cow ate it. So he killed it, then cut out its stomach and sent the entire thing to the government. You see, this government agency deals with damaged money. So if you hide your cash in the oven, then forget about it and turn it on, you can send it in. Forensic workers will carefully sort through the burnt banknotes, piecing together the remains like a puzzle. And if they can find more than half of a bill, they'll pay you back for it. So when he sent in the cow's stomach, they cut it open, pulled out the half-digested money, and sent him a check for $600. Pufferfish release a small She jumped a fence into the polar bear enclosure, right in the middle of feeding time. One of the bears bit her from behind as she swam. Rescuers finally pulled her out, but seconds later, she slipped and fell straight back in. The bear attacked again before they managed to drag her to safety for good. She had deep bites covering her body, but survived, and was later fined for trespassing. If you get bit by an animal with rabies, the virus will spread to you through their saliva. When the symptoms start, it will sort of When a bulldog breathes, its squashed snout and closed nostrils block the air from flowing properly. But hundreds of years ago, they had longer snouts, smoother faces, and straighter legs. Over the years, close relatives were bred together to exaggerate their features. And now their big jaws cause crowded teeth and infected gums. When a bulldog breathes, its squashed snout and closed nostrils block the air from flowing properly. But hundreds of years ago, they had longer snouts, smoother faces, and straighter legs. Over the years, close relatives were bred together to exaggerate their features. And now their big jaws cause crowded teeth and infected gums. Their skin folds get constant infections, and their snouts cause serious breathing problems. And since they've been bred to have large heads, giving birth to the puppies is almost impossible. Instead, they have to be cut out. He sunk his teeth into the opponent's ear and ripped off a chunk. The man jumped, bleeding and screaming in pain, but a doctor let the match continue until Mike Tyson did it again. But this time, he bit the other ear. Now, the fight kept going until the referee noticed the bite. Tyson was disqualified, fined $3 million, and banned from boxing for 15 months. This frog its limbs snap forward faster than a bullet, shattering the glass with the force of a gunshot. This limb has a joint that's held in place by a structure in its shell, acting like a latch that locks everything tight. And when it releases, the limb shoots forward so fast that it creates a superheated bubble in the water. When this bubble collapses, it releases a powerful shockwave, delivering a second hit strong enough to break shells. Its limbs snap forward. Have you ever wondered why brushing your teeth? They began digging up graves, looking for corpses that seemed too fresh. Then they would cut open their organs, looking for liquid blood. If they found some, the villagers believed that this meant the body belonged to a vampire. So they would cut the heads off of the corpses to keep them from coming back from the dead. Then they burned the organs, sometimes forcing sick villagers to consume the ashes as a cure. They began punching and kicking the eyes and gills can be an effective way to defend yourself during a shark attack. This can deter the shark from continuing its attack. Also, maintain strong eye contact as much as possible if you can, as this may cause the shark to lose interest. If it does lose interest, slowly and calmly back away towards safety, keeping your movements smooth to avoid splashing. The bird spits a thin strand of saliva. If you lose your leg, the skin will close up over the stump. They would cut the glands from the beaver's butts and squeeze them until a yellow goo came out. Now, this goo smelled sweet because of the animal's diet, and it was used in some foods as an alternative to vanilla. Eventually, it was replaced by chemicals that have the same flavor, but some perfumes still use beaver goo to this day, and you might even find it in your favorite whiskey. They would cut the magnifying glass concentrates the light into a tiny, scorching hot point, burning your skin. This happens because the glass bends and focuses sunlight, making it intense enough to cause third-degree burns. And if you had a massive one, the beam would hit your body like a laser, burning through skin in seconds. Then the heat would cut through muscle, searing nerves and boiling your blood. Eventually, your organs would burn, leaving only bone until even that turns to ash. The
Embedding a magnet in your fingertip would let you feel electromagnetic fields. The magnet vibrates slightly, allowing you to detect hidden electronics or wires, and connecting it to an infrared device would let you feel the distance of objects. You could even use it for party tricks, attracting small objects as if by magic. Eventually, though, the magnet would lose its strength, and any extra powers would be gone along with it. Embedding a magnet in your fingertip would.
If you pick your nose and eat your boogers, you're actually working against your body. You see, when you breathe in through your nostrils, the snot in your nose traps bacteria and viruses. And over time, the contaminated snot turns into boogers. Now, boogers are normally eliminated by sneezing, but when you eat them, you reintroduce the contaminated snot that your body defended against. If you pick your nose, if you shrank down to insect size, a single raindrop would hit you like a falling boulder. You'd have to dodge birds swooping down, mistaking you for food. Encountering an ant colony would be like facing an army. Their powerful mandibles could cause serious harm, and a swat from a cat's paw would send you flying through the air. Even the vibrations from human footsteps would feel like earthquakes. If you cut a pilonidal cyst in half, you'd probably find a clump of hair inside. Now, these hairs typically fall from your head and down the back of your shirt. And as you ruffle around throughout the day, they move down to this area and eventually embed into your skin. Your body perceives them as a foreign object, and the area becomes inflamed. Now, this can eventually cause a cyst to form that entraps more and more hairs as they fall. If you shrank down to If you could save your poop and donate it to someone who has an infection in their intestines, your sample would be screened to make sure that it has the helpful bacteria and that it's also free from contaminants. Then, through a colonoscopy, your poop would be delivered to another person's infected intestines. Your healthy poop will repopulate their gut with good bacteria, which fights the infection and restores balance in their digestive system. If you use a portion, the snail eats bird poop infested with the parasite's eggs, which hatch once they're inside. As it grows, the worm makes its way to the snail's eye stalks, making them swell and wriggle with green and white stripes. It also takes control of the snail's behavior, making it climb up branches where it's easy for birds to spot. The swollen eyes look like tasty caterpillars, and when a bird swoops in and eats them, the parasite lays more eggs inside the bird. These are ejected in the bird's poop, and the cycle starts again. The snail, they put the frozen hamster in the microwave. If you never cut your fingernails, they'll get long. Hold open your eyelids and lean over the eye wash station, letting the clean water hit both eyes at once. As it does, look up, down, left, and right. This will flush out the dangerous chemicals before they cause serious damage. Now, some chemicals are strong enough to blind you, even if you wash most of them out. To be sure, keep rinsing for at least 15 minutes. By that time, your eyes should be clear, saving you from going blind. If you have dandruff, you probably have an overgrowth of fungus on your scalp. This fungus feeds on your scalp's oils, and as the population grows, it consumes more and more. This causes irritation on your scalp, producing more dead skin cells than normal. These cells get mixed with the scalp's oil, sticking together into clumps, which is called dandruff, the white stuff you see falling out of your hair. If you have You might find hair, teeth, and even an eye if you cut open a teratoma.
A surgeon will remove a healthy vein from your leg if you have a blocked artery. Then they will open up your chest and stitch one end of the healthy vein to the clogged artery right above the blockage, and the other end is stitched right below it, creating a bypass around the blocked part of the artery. The blood is redirected through the transplanted vein, which restores your blood flow. A doctor cuts the most swollen part of an abscess to drain it. This pocket of pus forms due to infection when bacteria enters the body through a cut in the skin. The body's immune system sends cells, which can lead to a buildup of pus under the skin. And some people think you can just drain it yourself, but this will most likely cause the infection to spread. A doctor cuts the most swollen part of an abscess. Popping a giant blister with a needle to drain the fluid is actually sometimes advisable. Now, normally, popping a blister isn't recommended, but when these fluid-filled sacs grow so large, they can actually rip through unintentionally, and this uncontrolled tear can greatly increase your risk of infection. So instead, it should be popped by a medical professional using a sterilized needle. Popping. A doctor would drill a hole in your head if you had a really bad headache 500 years ago. They would begin by shaving the area, then use a hand-operated tool to start drilling into your skull. Some of these doctors believed this would allow evil spirits to escape through the hole. In reality, the procedure had a very low success rate and probably just caused more pain. This nose job begins with a surgeon making a small incision across the bottom of the nose. This is so the skin can be peeled back, exposing the bone and cartilage. The goal of this specific procedure is to reduce the hump on the bridge of the nose. The bone and cartilage are carefully shaved down, reshaping it into a smoother, straighter bridge. Once they're finished, the skin is draped over the new bridge, and the incisions are stitched up. This nose job. A surgeon creates a small opening on your abdomen by bringing a part of the colon through the abdominal wall, known as a stoma. Then it's secured to the surrounding skin on the stomach. After surgery, a plastic seal is placed over the open end, connecting it to a bag. As your digestive system processes food, waste passes through the intestines and exits into the bag. A dentist makes a small incision in your gum to expose the tip of the tooth's root. Next, they carefully remove the infected tissue surrounding the root, ensuring the area is clean. Then, the very tip of the root is trimmed off to cut off any remaining infection. A small filling is placed at the end of the root to seal it, preventing bacteria from re-entering. The gum is then stitched back together and the wound heals. The doctor makes a horizontal incision through the skin and underlying tissues of the abdomen during a C-section. Next, another incision is made in the uterus, exposing the sac where the baby is protected. The doctor gently lifts the baby out of the uterus, cutting the umbilical cord once the baby is fully out. Afterward, the placenta is removed, and the uterine incision is stitched back together. Finally, the abdominal layers are closed with staples, ensuring the body can begin healing. If you need a tooth implant, surgeons can make an incision in your hip and remove a small section of bone. This bone is then shaped and placed into the jaw where it's needed, fusing with your existing bone. Once it heals, a titanium screw is inserted, acting as the root for your new tooth. After a few months, the bone and screw fuse together, creating a strong base for a custom-made tooth. If you need a tooth implant, surgeons can make an incision in your hip and remove a small section of The doctor carefully inserts the endoscope through your mouth, navigating it down your esophagus and into your stomach. Once inside, they strategically place a series of durable sutures along the stomach's inner wall. These sutures pull the stomach into a narrow tube-like shape, dramatically reducing its size. When you eat, your new smaller stomach will make you feel full sooner, leading to weight loss. When you get your teeth whitened, a dentist will cover your gums in a protective barrier to shield them from the chemicals. Then, a concentrated bleaching gel is added to each individual tooth. Once the gel is on, a special light is directed at the teeth that activates the bleach by slightly heating it. This enhances the whitening process and allows the gel to penetrate the outer layer of the tooth, lifting away the stains. The skin is carefully cut from your forehead, and this forehead flap stays attached to a blood vessel to keep it alive. It's then folded down to cover the hole in your nose where the skin cancer was removed. It's attached in place with stitches, and your forehead is sewn back together. Over the next few weeks, the skin begins to heal with the blood vessel feeding it nutrients. And once it's strong enough, it's cut away from your forehead, leaving you with a brand new nose. Your lost tooth could be replaced with a smart implant. And every time you chewed, this implant would make its own electricity, which is used to charge itself. With that electricity, it powers a tiny light, which heals your gums. And the implant surface is made up of tiny particles, which uses the electricity to push away bacteria so they can stick. It could even monitor the level of acid in your mouth, letting your dentist check up on you in real time. When a doctor gives you a shot, they can sometimes accidentally push the needle all the way through your vein, which ends up puncturing both sides. Once the needle is removed, it leaves 2 holes in the vein. And before the body can thicken the blood and seal these holes, it bleeds into the surrounding tissues. This leaked blood forms a dark, tender area under the skin, creating bruises and splotchy areas.